If you're a wine enthusiast or honestly just someone who loves a seriously cool travel experience, you've probably got a bucket list. And when most of us in the US think about booking a world class wine getaway, our minds instantly jump to the usual suspects, right? We're picturing expensive overseas flights to the rolling hills of Tuscany, or maybe packing up the car for a heavily planned, pretty pricey weekend driving up to Northern California. But in this explainer, we're doing something a little different. We are uncovering a booming, absolutely world-class wine destination that is likely sitting right under your nose. We're going to explore a rustic, culturally rich wine hub that has completely transformed over the last few decades into an absolute powerhouse of flavor, luxury, and rule-breaking winemaking. So let me just ask you, where do you think North America's most exciting wine frontier is right now? Take a second, think about it. Is it some hidden little pocket up in Northern California? Or maybe somewhere in the damp, lush Pacific Northwest? You're probably picturing a distant, exotic locale that requires a massive travel budget, a crazy itinerary, and multiple layovers just to get to. But what if I told you that this rapidly rising star of the global culinary and wine world is practically right next door? The answer is exactly 90 miles south of San Diego, California. Literally, that is it. Just a 90-minute drive across the border into Baja California, Mexico, and boom, you have arrived in the stunning Valle de Guadalupe. It completely shatters this illusion that avant-garde, world-class wine regions have to be oceans away. The reality is, if you're in Southern California, you could theoretically finish your breakfast at home, cross the border, and be tasting some of the most innovative wines on the continent before lunch. It's incredibly accessible, it's vibrant, and it is pulling in serious, massive attention from the international scene.
To give you a real sense of scale here, Valle de Guadalupe is roughly half the physical size of Napa Valley, but man, it is a compact powerhouse. It's super unusual for such a small geographical footprint to shoulder almost an entire nation's industry. But this single arid valley produces up to 90% of all Mexican wine. That's huge. It is the undisputed epicenter of Mexico's viticulture. Right now, it's home to well over 150 and, by some recent counts, over 250 distinct wineries. And they range from tiny, rustic family setups producing just a few hundred cases to massive, highly sophisticated commercial operations.
Now, while this massive explosion in popularity feels super recent, people actually call it the Baja boom, the roots here run deep, like really deep. We aren't just looking at a trendy pop-up region. Winemaking in Mexico actually stretches all the way back to the 1500s with the arrival of the Spanish. But the modern Renaissance, the era that truly put this valley on the map, kicked off around 1972 with the founding of Casa Pedro de Mec. Then in the 80s, we got Montezanic, which most people consider the Valle's first true boutique winery. But the real game changer, that happened in 2004. A Bordeaux-trained enologist named Hugo de Costa founded La Escuelita, basically a winemaking school specifically designed to train local growers. What made it so revolutionary was that he taught locals how to use repurposed, discarded equipment. He empowered farmers who couldn't afford expensive, flashy tech to start making their own wine. That right there beautifully laid the foundation for this incredible grassroots talent we see today. And this brings us to a really fascinating contrast between traditional wine regions and Valle de Guadalupe. If you go to established spots in France, Italy, or even parts of California, you inevitably run into incredibly strict appellation laws. Napa Valley, for instance, has rigid rules dictating exactly what grapes can be grown where and the exact percentages needed to label a bottle a certain way. But in the Valle, there is no strict denominación de origen holding anyone back. It is literally the Wild West of winemaking. Winemakers are only limited by their own imaginations, which allows for this radical, unhindered experimental freedom you just don't see up north. Because of that total lack of regulation, we are seeing something beautiful happen. It's birthed a rapidly developing natural wine culture and some incredibly unusual local blends, like the ones from Bodega Sealy. Winemakers are gleefully throwing the rulebook out the window. They're making outstanding blends that would honestly be considered absolute sacrilege to a traditional wine snob. I mean, a Cabernet Nebbiolo blend? Think about that for a second. Taking a classic French Bordeaux grape and blending it seamlessly with a notoriously finicky Italian Piedmont grape. It's completely rebellious. They're taking heat-loving grapes like Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, and Tempranillo and mixing them in ways that are uniquely, distinctly Mexican, resulting in bold profiles you just can't find anywhere else. But hey, you can't talk about wine without talking about the earth it comes from, right?
A drive through the valley reveals these gorgeous, old, gnarled bush vines, many of which are Chenin Blanc, one of the region's earliest signature varieties. The soil is this complex mix of sandy loam and red clay, but the real magic happens in the air. Every morning and evening, dense coastal fog and ocean breezes from the nearby Pacific roll over the mountains and sweep into the valley. This marine layer cools the grapes down from that intense Baja sun, and when it evaporates, it actually leaves behind a subtle layer of salt on the grape skins. This creates an incredible marine salinity, a literal salty tinge at the back of the palate. It pairs beautifully with their fruit-forward reds and gives the Valle an unmistakable sense of place. And that distinct, lingering salinity leads us perfectly into the region's extraordinary eno-tourism boom, because honestly, the wine is only half the story here. The culinary scene, famously known as Baja Med, is nothing short of world-class. They heavily utilize local seafood and farm-fresh ingredients to perfectly complement that salty minerality in your glass. Just picture sitting at a breathtaking outdoor table at a spot like Fauna Restaurant in Bruma, eating fresh-caught Pacific chocolate clams, rich local sea urchin or wood-fired quail, all paired with a crisp Chateau Domecq white. This amazing synergy of land, sea, and vine has transformed the valley into a luxury gastronomic destination that easily rivals the best culinary hotspots in the world. The valley has evolved way beyond just a simple tasting room where you stand at a counter and sip. It is a full-blown adventure. Today, a visitor's itinerary might include a sunrise hot air balloon flight, drifting silently over the vineyards, or a breathtaking helicopter tour. You could take a private Baja cooking class to master the local rustic cuisine, or if you're a thrill seeker, book an off-road ATV tour roaring through the dusty dirt roads of the wine country. It is a far cry from the quiet, sometimes stuffy wine tours you might find elsewhere. It's an immersive, adventurous lifestyle offering tailored for the modern luxury traveler who wants elegance, but also a little bit of excitement. However, to truly grasp this rapid globalization, we do have to look at the entire picture. As international investment pours in and the region booms in popularity, some complex socioeconomic realities are bubbling to the surface. A recent sociological study from the National Autonomous University at Mexico, UNAM, actually examined the concept of quality in this globalized viticulture. It takes a really objective look at how this massive explosion of luxury tourism impacts the physical territory and, importantly, the local people actually living and working in these historical spaces. The study focuses heavily on the word calidad, or quality. But as the researchers note, quality is a pretty loaded term. It's polysemic, meaning it means entirely different things depending on who's using it. Different actors use the idea of quality wine to define and defend their own interests. And on the ground, this translates to a very noticeable, very real shift. A region that was historically rooted in accessible, humble agriculture is rapidly transitioning into an exclusive, elite space. The pursuit of high-end luxury eno-tourism often leads to gentrification of the rural landscape, which can inadvertently price out the very agricultural workers and local families who have tended this land for generations, as property values absolutely skyrocket for resort development. Compounding that socioeconomic shift is a very tangible, severe environmental hurdle: water scarcity. Valle de Guadalupe is undeniably stunning, but it is a desert. It is incredibly arid, receiving only about 3 to 4 inches of rain annually. To put that into perspective for you, Napa Valley gets roughly 20 to 25 inches a year. Because this massive water deficit remains largely unaddressed amid the boom in hotel and restaurant construction, a lot of vineyards are actually being forced to adapt by moving their grape growing further south. They're heading to lesser-known valleys like Valle Santo Tomas and Valle San Vicente, where there's simply more water and open space available. Which brings us to the ultimate question. As globalization accelerates, what does the future hold for Valle de Guadalupe? It is, without a doubt, North America's most exciting, rule-breaking wine frontier. It offers these unparalleled, world-class culinary experiences and stunning, rustic beauty right in our backyard, totally redefining what wine country can feel like. But moving forward, the region faces a really fascinating challenge. How will it balance this lucrative, incredible luxury boom with the pressing need for environmental and socioeconomic sustainability? It's a remarkable, ever-evolving place, and it's absolutely worth keeping an eye on. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.